everyone, I am Jana Jamail. I'm a neuronutritionist and my background is in human nutrition and functional medicine and applied neuroscience. I'm also a certified nutrition specialist and a licensed dietitian nutritionist. So if you have never heard any of the titles that I just mentioned, what my particular flavor of nutrition means is I look at the body as a system and look at how those symptoms that people present with are affecting the brain on a cellular level. I also consider what would be causing those symptoms. So not as a diagnosis, but as a way to understand how the different organ systems in the body are talking to each other and see where the disconnect is. So the title of this talk is Eating for Mental Health, but what I hope you see is that this isn't completely about food. It's also about creating stability in the system and the nervous system in particular, and how to regulate that. So I'm actually going to be taking you through a really interesting case and a client that I've worked with, and you might recognize some of these symptoms in yourself or in people that you know, in your family, or even clients of your own. But I really wanted to talk about her because we live in a constantly overly stressed environment, and so presenting this really shows how when we look at stabilizing the body and the brain and the mood as one whole unit, that's when we really get people to the other side. So this is eating for mental health, but it's going to be eating and we're going to be thinking about it in different ways. Okay, so this case is of a 19-year-old. She was high achieving, really responsible. She was chronically stressed. So she was a female college student doing 2 university programs. So she was doing a religious program and a business program. So she was attending 2 separate universities. She was carrying over 20 credit hours. She lived in a really conservative family that had a lot of responsibility on her for her parents and her siblings. And she was so worried about her health, she was already concerned about her fertility, even as a teenager, which isn't something that we're normally that concerned with at that age of 19. So the big red flags she presented to me and really showed me that her body was struggling just to thrive, have any amount of stability. She would have these crazy fainting spells where she would be at the mall with friends, then all of a sudden she would just go down. And no one would know why. She wouldn't even feel herself go down. She would just come to and she's on the floor. She has no idea how she got there. She would have dizziness anytime she would get up from sitting. In the morning when she would wake up and stand up, she would almost like black out and then come to and need to sit down again and then try and get up again and be really dizzy. So anything she was doing, she almost needed to sit immediately after doing it because it was overwhelming to her. She also had severe fatigue and she needed naps consistently throughout the day, especially if she saw friends. She went to class, she went for a walk, anything at all, she would need a nap. She had a lot of brain fog. She could not concentrate well. She had memory issues. She was depressed. She was irritable. And her normal life became almost unmanageable in a depleting way where she just was not thriving. And she continued to physiologically decline. She lost a lot of weight. She lost 20 pounds in 1 year without trying. She didn't change anything in her diet. She just started losing weight. She also could not gain weight no matter what she tried doing. And that chronic fatigue and low energy persisted. She also got some lab work done and she had low hormones across the board: progesterone, estrogen, testosterone. So really things that are not normal in someone who is 19. So this didn't look like only stress to me. This looked like her body had insufficient resources. She had tried previous interventions, but without any resolution. She saw a functional medicine doctor, she saw multiple doctors, she saw her OBGYN. No one could give her a diagnosis, and they would say, oh, you're young, you're 19, you're probably just fine. And when she saw that functional medicine doctor, they put her on 40 plus supplements in one day, and that didn't really do anything for her. It didn't change anything. It didn't make her feel better. Her fatigue was the same. And she actually ended up in the emergency room because she just was feeling horrible. And that's where they learned that she actually had low blood pressure, all of her low hormones. She just wasn't thriving. So she had a lot of interventions, but she didn't have an outcome that was actually helping her. So when she came to me, she could barely stay awake during our call. And normally during our calls, I sit and I ask questions. I try to understand what has worked in the past, what hasn't worked in the past. Has she felt better? How long have these things been going on? And she was kind of in and out of concentration. She was really struggling. And she was looking a lot to her parent off screen because she was constantly checking if what she was saying made sense, or if how she was engaging made sense, because she couldn't even track her own train of thought properly. She was really frustrated that she kept losing weight. She felt really insecure about it. She felt like her hair was thinning. She felt like her skin was worsening. And then she wasn't sleeping well, and she had no school life balance. So if you're listening to this, the key things I really want you to take away is the symptoms that I noticed the most in her, that I hear a lot in other people that they ignore, and they say like, oh, it's normal, it'll go away. The dizziness, the brain fog, memory issues, irritability. She had chronic constipation and fatigue. This is telling me the brain and the body are under constant pressure, and it cannot recover, and it's recirculating toxins. Okay, so this is the case, and now we're going to get into how do we eat for mental health? Like, how is a nutritionist going to help someone in this situation? So the first thing I want to talk about is the gut-brain-liver axis, because I would not be a good neuroscientist if I didn't tell you how all of this connected. So this case is actually a perfect example of what happens when the brain, the gut, and the liver are all under strain at one time, and there's not one root cause. It's a system that's not communicating or recovering well. So the brain, gut, and the liver are constantly talking to each other. They do not function in isolation. So if one thing is off, the gut is off, maybe you don't have a good gut lining, maybe you have anxiety, maybe you're not detoxing well, the other part of that triangle is going to compensate. Your gut and your brain are going to try and compensate for your liver, so on and so forth. But eventually that compensation starts to decline and all three become affected. So instead of asking what's wrong when I see a client like this, I ask, where is that communication breakdown happening? So the brain and the gut are connected through something called the vagus nerve. They talk all day long. It is bi-directional. If the brain is stressed, the gut can respond. It can have a pain in the stomach. You might feel like you have an anxious stomach. You might have more loose stool. You might lean more constipated. If you have gut issues, if you have inflammation in your gut, if your gut lining is not stable and you're not absorbing your nutrients, you're going to have brain fog, memory issues, concentration issues, fatigue. Those things follow each other. So this is why mental symptoms and physical symptoms often show up together. And this gut little triangle we have going on is exactly what was going on in this client, especially because she was leaning with constipation. If you're constipated, which so many people are, if you're constipated, what happens is when your body tries to detox with the liver wants to dump those toxins into the gut, and then it wants the gut to remove all those toxins through your stool, sometimes also in urine. But if you're constipated, the liver dumps everything into the gut, and then the gut recycles that toxin back into the bloodstream because it's not removing it, so it's getting reabsorbed. So it gets reabsorbed into your brain again, into your gut again, into your body again, and then you have an immune system response. So this is why it's so important to address this triangle. So I address this triangle through nutrition, obviously because I'm a nutritionist. But what I want to say about nutrition here is we weren't only optimizing what she was doing, we were stabilizing a depleted system. So we're rebuilding her foundation so her body could actually start to thrive again. So the entire goal was not only stabilize, but rebuild a foundation. So the real reason I'm showing you nutrition as an intervention is because this was the quickest way to get her the biggest improvements to her system in the quickest fashion. A lot of people need that relief. If you're someone who's having brain fog, if you have constipation, you're not really in it for a super big intervention and a ton of supplements and all of the education. You need quick things that are gonna work right now to give you the biggest relief. And that's exactly what I did with her. So the body really wants to heal. It's really good at healing, but it needs food and building blocks in order for that healing to happen. So I had to increase her protein from 80 to 90 grams a day. Why is protein important for the brain? It supports neurotransmitter production. So if you're not familiar with neurotransmitters, dopamine, serotonin, maybe you've heard of those. Those are also created in your gut as well as in your brain. So if you're eating enough protein, it's going to stabilize that production. So it's going to improve your mood then, it's going to improve your focus, it's going to build that resiliency. Protein is like a building block in and of itself. It turns on a lot of things. It helps a lot of things expand in your body. So if you're not getting enough of it, those hormones necessary for things, the enzymes necessary for things in the body to work, they're not going to be there. So we want enough protein. The next thing I really focused on with her was carbohydrates. A lot of people don't know this, but carbohydrates, 170 grams a day, is kind of the minimum to get your gut moving. It supports nervous system regulation. So that is a two-way street. Gut motility and nervous system regulation work together. How? It reduces constipation. It also improves fiber content. So carbohydrates are kind of like a secret weapon with fiber together. So we're talking about complex carbohydrates. What's a complex carbohydrate? Oats, sweet potatoes, lentils, beans, vegetables. Those are complex carbohydrates that also have high fiber content. So while you want 170 grams of carbs a day, you want 30 grams of fiber a day, which can be hard to get. So that's no small feat. But what that does is having complex carbs with enough fiber, that helps to balance your mood because it's stabilizing your blood sugar. So fiber is really good at reducing blood sugar because it slows down digestion and gives your chance of body to absorb everything properly. What does that look like? Instead of having insulin spiking throughout the day and even the evening, you're gonna have way more even normal glucose spiking, where it's kind of like in waves instead of giant up and down spikes all day with insulin and then into the night. So one of the biggest ways you know that fiber is helping you is your sleep is a whole lot better. So that was something we had to work on because, as I mentioned, her sleep was really disrupted and I knew that she wasn't getting enough fiber from that. And then obviously we focus on fat, but it's what kind of fat. She was overeating fat by a whole lot. We're talking 90 to 100 grams of fat a day. Ideally, she should have been having about 48 grams of fat. So instead of relying on fat for all of her energy, we again increased protein and carbohydrates, but we also focused on adding anti-inflammatory properties to her fat so that it would give her more bang for her buck. So what does that look like? We want fat to have omega-3s, we want fat to have omega-6s and omega-9s. All of those are really great for your gut. It's good for your brain. It's kind of like taking a natural anti-inflammatory. So what foods have those things? Salmon, olive oil, walnuts, all of those are great fats and they're really high in omega-3s. So the last thing we emphasized was eating colorful foods. They're high in antioxidants, which is really protective for the brain and the gut, and also similar to things like omega-3s, they're anti-inflammatory. They're very protective and they help with detoxifying the body. So any colorful food was something we wanted to add in. Okay, that was a lot of information on nutrition, and I know it can get a little boring. We did not expect her to eat perfectly. So if you're sitting here thinking, that's a whole laundry list of things, how was she able to do that at 19? We didn't expect her to do it perfectly. Really what I had her do was, can we add one thing a day that's either high in fiber, very colorful, high in protein, or high in carbohydrates? And we would do that every single day. We would just add one thing. And eventually those things just naturally worked into her regular routine. So if you're wanting to eat for your mental health and you feel like that was so much information, how could I even do that? Start with one thing. 1 cup of oats, 1 cup of brown rice, 1 cup of blueberries, 1 cup of kale. Just adding one thing at a time can really change things over and actually make a huge difference for you. So this wasn't about macronutrients, it was about giving the brain and body usable fuel. Okay, the most boring part, I apologize, it's food timing. Nutrition is not sexy, and the least sexy part of it is food timing. But this was actually the most critical intervention that she needed. And this is eating for mental health in a nutshell. If you walk away with one thing, food timing. So in order to do everything we needed to do to help with her symptoms, we had to restore stability to her system. So what does food timing look like that's gonna benefit someone who's overly stressed, working too much, has brain fog, and her litany of symptoms? It's boring work. It is breakfast within 1 hour of waking up. That's gonna help stabilize her cortisol. And then it's making sure that breakfast has protein and a complex carb. And then lunch is a non-negotiable. It could be 11 to 12 or 12 to 1, but it has to be a non-negotiable. Again, protein and complex carb are non-negotiable there. Same thing for a snack. dinner, and then an evening snack. So regular eating creates predictability for the nervous system. So a lot of people are actually under eating who are performing really high level. They're really showing up. They're doing double. They're drinking coffee all day long, and that's the only thing they're burning through. And half the time they don't have time for food. Well, so what that's doing is your nervous system is going, I am on fire. I cannot survive on caffeine, and I am going to crash, which is exactly what this 19-year-old was doing. And I'm sure some of you who are listening have probably done the same thing. So regular eating stabilizes the nervous system, and it goes, oh, I know exactly when I'm going to get my next hit of food, and I don't have to worry, and I'm not going to burn through caffeine. So this was the most important piece, not what she ate, but when she ate. Why does this timing matter? This presents blood sugar crashes, so better sleep, better mood stability throughout the day. It reduces stress hormone spikes, so we're able to balance cortisol and aldosterone, so you're not spiking all day, having anxiety, having panic, leaning towards depression. Maybe you start ruminating. That's decreasing as well. So that's going to lead to mood stability. And again, it supports that nervous system regulation, so your body is not constantly jumping into fight or flight because it's trying to live on caffeine. So a depleted system cannot tolerate long gaps without fuel. So what is this shift? It shifts the system from reactive, depleted, unstable to predictable, fueled, and regulated. So remember when I mentioned you need to get the most out of your intervention. That's why I wanted to start with food, because I knew it was going to be a big bang for her buck. Well, electrolytes in chronically stressed people are kind of like a magic bullet and one of the best ways to eat for mental health. So what many people don't know is that when you're chronically stressed, you're burning through potassium, sodium, magnesium, and vitamin C. Because that's what your body needs in order to roll through more cortisol, to increase aldosterone. We got to keep going. We're in fight or flight. We got to keep this thing moving. Well, we need nutrients in order to do that. And those are the big four that you're going to burn through. So if you need those to balance your cortisol and you don't have any, now you're going to start crashing because we have fatigue. Chronic stress, especially high levels of cortisol, are very toxic to the brain. They lean people anxious, depressive, sometimes even OCD. So it's really important that we get that stress response under control. So what do you do though if you are chronically stressed? You don't have a coping mechanism, and we have to fuel those adrenal glands, the cortisol and the aldosterone. Well, that's where electrolytes come in. So if you aren't getting enough, you will get dizzy. You will notice that all of a sudden you're having blood pressure issues like she did. She had low blood pressure, which we'll get into what else that does to your brain. So now we have that blacking out, that fatigue, that brain fog as well. So what do we do for clients like this? For her, I had to treat her like a marathon runner, which you're going to think she's a 19-year-old kid who's just going to college and she wasn't even working out. You're treating her like a marathon runner? Yes, I was. She woke up in the morning and I had her take a salt chew. If you don't know what a salt chew is, it's a little stick that marathon runners take while they're running for a huge boost of energy. I had to give her that first thing in the morning so that she could actually wake up, have something for her adrenals to use to get her going. Because cortisol wakes you up in the morning if you didn't know. So we would start with that. She would drink an electrolyte throughout the day. At 1 o'clock, she had another salt chew. She would have another electrolyte in the afternoon, and she would have a salt chew at bed. Or we had fun little adrenal cocktails that we did at bedtime for her. So if you are interested in an adrenal cocktail, they can be fun, especially for evening. We did cranberry juice, a little bit of coconut water. That's potassium right there. That's vitamin C right there. We did cream of tartar. That's another potassium. We also did sea salt, and then we did a little bit of magnesium powder as well. And that calmed her system down in the evening. But we really had to boost her adrenals because she was burning through so much. So I mentioned blood pressure. Aldosterone, which is the sister to cortisol, when it becomes imbalanced, this is going to affect blood pressure. Now, this was one of the biggest indicators that she was getting dizzy. When she would stand up, she would black out and she was fatigued. She wasn't getting enough blood to her brain, which means her blood or her brain is starving from low oxygen, low nutrients because there's low glucose. The only way for your brain to get glucose is if blood is coming through there. It has no tissue to store glucose. So it signals the body, hey, I need more blood, I need more. But if you don't have good blood pressure, the body can try and send it, but it's not going to get there. And so we had to work to make sure she was getting enough food, she was getting enough electrolytes so that we could actually repair that blood pressure. So I know that was a whole lot, but what we have to think about is chronically stressed individuals, and you might be one of these yourself. You actually need to think of yourself as an athlete. You need to think, am I getting enough electrolytes? Am I doing everything I need to make sure those nutrients are getting to my brain? Am I training like a marathon runner? So, and am I burning through all my reserves, and then I can't show up the next day and run again and train again? So you need to think of yourself like an athlete if you are chronically stressed. Okay, so let's get into that cortisol balance. So nutrition stabilized her biology, but then we had to work on that stress cycle. We added the electrolytes, we added the food, but she's still chronically stressed. Like, we still have quite a bit of things going on, right? So now we have to talk about, well, what do we do with someone who has high stress? Her work was high stress with having to do 2 college programs, and then she's got high stress when she comes home. Does that sound like you? You leave a high stress job, you return home to maybe another full-time job. Maybe you have kids. Maybe you're taking care of a family member. Maybe you are that caretaker for a sibling. Stress doesn't leave often when we leave it at the office. So now we have layers of stress. Well, the problem with this is the body doesn't get the rest signal then. And so when you're go, 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 this leads to a cortisol imbalance, and that can spiral the anxiety loop, which we will get into. But let's talk about what boundaries we put in place for her body to come down from the day and to know when the stress was going to be over. Because signaling the body that stress is going to be over is very important for it. So I know we were talking about eating for mental health, but now we're going to be thinking about mental health. So we had to create a cortisol boundary for her. And the goal was stop the chronic stress. So we had a non-negotiable hard stop at 8 p.m. I know some of you are going to think, I cannot stop working at 8 p.m. Well, there is a time you can stop working. So we stopped working at 8 p.m. No school, no work. We started a sleep hygiene routine. We had to take a shower. We didn't have the TV on, and we started an evening support. She would do her adrenal cocktail in the evening, or she would do chamomile tea to help signal to her nervous system we are calming down. So her body never knew when that day ended, but once we started implementing that hard 8 p.m. stop, then it could come out of stress mode. And something that we did with that hard 8 p.m. stop is we did a cognitive shift. So we went from, we know we're in high energy, we're working, and now it's 8. We are not in high energy and we're not working. But you can't just do that with only a hard stop. You have to do a little bit of a talk to yourself. So something she would say often is, oh, I should have finished that paper. I should have taken those notes. And I would tell her, you need to stop shitting on yourself. No, I did not, Gus. And I would say you need to replace it with, I would have if I could have, and today I didn't have it in me. Why? That's reducing internal pressure, and it's signaling safety to her body versus threat. But it's not enough to just say I should have or I could have. That's not enough. Then we have to make some changes. So we had some rules to increase safety and joy. The first one was no doom scrolling. No Instagram, no TikTok after 8 p.m. Nothing good online happens after 8 p.m. anyway. So no social media after 8 p.m. No productivity pressure. You had to return to something that you enjoyed doing, or you had to create. So something she chose was Legos, coloring, and listening to a fun podcast. So her brain then got the evidence of the shift from I'm working to I'm safe. And she's down regulating her nervous system because she's sipping on her lovely little electrolyte cocktail in the evening as well. So this changes from constant output, chronic stress, anxiety loop to boundary, recovery, regulation. So that 8 p.m. boundary was a turning point. Something that's really important to share, because a lot of people come to nutritionists who do have an understanding of the nervous system, but maybe aren't neuroscientists. But something that we don't share enough as nutritionists is you can't out-nutrition a brain that doesn't feel safe. No matter how much you eat, no matter how many calories you're getting in, no matter how many electrolytes you're taking, if you don't feel safe, your brain, it's not going to matter for your brain. So we had to interrupt the anxiety cycle as well. This is one of my all-time favorite topics, not as a nutritionist, but as a neuroscientist, and it's getting out of the anxiety loop. So again, this is thinking for mental health. We're moving a little bit away from eating for mental health. But so this is where we shift from left brain dominance to right brain activation. Now, I'm going to make this really simple for people because not everyone is going to understand left and right brain information. So to other neuroscientists out there, we know it's more complex than this. For everyone watching, we're going to keep it simple. The left brain is where anxiety lives. The right brain is where creativity lives. They both cannot be on at the same time. So anxiety is pattern detection and threat scanning. So if you're doom scrolling on social media and you're seeing things about climate change and the news and war and, oh, my best friend didn't get that job, or they got the job and I wanted that job. Well, we're getting too much input, and now we're pattern detection. Things aren't going so well. Now we're in a loop. What normally happens in real life is your left hemisphere goes, oh, that doesn't look good. That looks like a threat. And your right hemisphere goes, what is that? Oh, no, that's not a threat. That's just your friend's new sweater. Everything's okay. And your left brain goes, oh, okay. And the anxiety loop ends. But when you're getting too much feedback, the right brain doesn't have time to be like, it's just your friend's sweater. It's just your friend's sweater. That doesn't get to happen. So you just continue on this rat wheel of anxiety. So what we have to do is change that loop so it can complete. And what we're going to do is a little bit of something that most people don't think about in order to complete that. So instead of the brain asking it's safe and trying to stop the anxiety spiral, we're going to interrupt the loop with creation. So I'm going to walk you through exactly what I did with this client. I have this client close their eyes and imagine a safe, beautiful place that you love. So it could be your favorite hiking trail. You love the green trees. You can smell the grass. You love that. It could be the beach. Everybody loves the beach. You can hear the ocean waves. It could be in the middle of the night, first snowfall. You wake up and you see those big, huge flakes and it's completely silent outside. Okay, so that's your scene. So now we have to engage. So what do you see? Rolling waves hitting the sand. The sun is setting. Wind is going in the breeze against the trees. That's our beach. Your hiking trail. Maybe you're seeing all these fresh green leaves because it's spring, and you're also seeing a lake, and you're also seeing dogs running. That's your visual for your hiking trail. Or maybe you're watching that snowfall and everything is so quiet and you don't know how it's so beautiful in the middle of winter and how these giant snowflakes are falling. That's your scene. Okay, but what does it smell like? I think if it's winter, it's probably gonna smell really crisp. When it's snowing, it has that weird crisp scent. Then if you're at the beach, it might smell like salt because you have that salt coming off of the ocean breeze. And then if you're on the trail, maybe it smells like grass. Maybe it's a little bit damp because you have that fresh smell of dirt as well because maybe it just rained. And then what sensation do you have? Do you have a light breeze when you're out hiking? Is it cold? Do you need a light jacket? If you're at the beach, is the sun hitting your back or is it hitting your face and it's not too hot? It's just perfectly warm. Or is it winter and are your cheeks just a little bit cold but you just got hit with the snowflake? And just like that, your brain shifted out of anxiety because you cannot create the scene you were just in and also think about your anxious spiral. You can do that anywhere with anything. You can do it by thinking about baking. What cake would you bake? That's the most perfect cake in the world. You can think about it as science. So what did I do with this client? We did this practice. She could sit anywhere and do this and reset her nervous system. But the best part is when you take this idea of creating and you actually put it into practice in real life. And I don't mean actually going to the beach or somewhere snowing. I mean actually engaging in an art craft, creating something. So how do you do this in the real world? It's actually getting into flow. So a lot of people don't know what flow is, but if you've ever been in the zone, or if you think you know what the zone is, that's flow. So if you ever had a runner's high where everything just feels amazing, running doesn't hurt, it feels good, that pounding of your feet, you've been in flow. If you've played tennis and the back and forth of the ball and your body's just moving and you're not even thinking about it, you've been in flow. If you are a musician and you've played an instrument and you've gotten lost in it, the movie Soul is fantastic from Pixar to show what flow is. You've been in flow. Another way to do flow is crocheting and knitting because you're watching your hands moving and you completely zone and you're in flow. Flow is a meditative state. It's extremely calming to the nervous system, and you cannot be in anxiety when you're in flow. But for this specific client, it wasn't about art or music or baking or nature. She wanted to do Legos. She wanted to do something she loved as a kid. And this is something I love to start with clients, where if you don't know where to start, you don't know what you like, you're way too high stressed, you're working way too hard, then what you need to do is think about, what did I like to do when I was 5? Did I like to draw? Did I like space? Did I like dinosaurs? I like to play outside. Did I like going on a swing? What did I like? And then you start engaging in that way. So she loved Legos. She loved drawing. Those were things she did every single night at 8 p.m. when she was not going to work anymore. We had our hard cutoff. So what this did is it shut her nervous system and anxiety spiral off, and it put her in flow, and it put her in calm. So what does this do? It doesn't just reduce your anxiety. It's also going to help regulate that nervous system and restore your balance and reduce depression as well, because flow is very good for your brain. That meditative state can start bringing up feelings of gratitude, which are very important for your brain and your gut as well. So this is one of the fastest ways to reset the brain. So I really want to talk to you how nutrition stabilizes the system. Electrolytes help restabilize that as well, in a way where we're burning, but we're also providing fuel for the body. Boundaries are reducing the stress load, and creation is restoring balance. So this is the combination that changes mental health. So it is eating for mental health, but we're also thinking for mental health. Okay, so what happened? We implemented all of these things over 3 months. And in 3 months, she had a huge energy shift. No more fatigue. She couldn't even remember the last time she had a fatigue. She couldn't remember the last time she needed a nap or she needed to sit down. Completely resolved. No more blackouts when standing up. Her blood pressure stabilized. She restored her sleep. She was waking up constantly at night. She was having long, deep sleep, consistent. She was waking up with energy. Her bowel movements were normal. I know that doesn't feel like a big thing for a lot of people, but constipation is something that can plague people for life. Getting enough of those carbohydrates was huge for her, and that really helped with her gut motility. So with that, then her brain fog was gone. Her concentration was restored. Her memory was improved. And once the brain had the fuel and stability, what happened was a lot of changes in her cognition actually followed, where she realized she had some underlying childhood trauma that hadn't been addressed, and maybe she had been running from that by working too hard. And that was something she was ready to actually address with a therapist. And so what I really want to highlight here is, yes, we were eating for mental health, but we were also resetting her entire system. So she went from exhausted, dysregulated, and surviving to energized, stable, and was able to even build a path forward where she even wanted to start a weight training program when she couldn't even go for a walk before. So this is what happens with biology and the brain when we introduce the right building blocks, and this is even what nutrition can do. So thank you so much for coming to my talk. This was eating for mental health and also a little bit of thinking for mental health. I hope your takeaway is it's not about eating healthy or being perfect about eating healthy. It's about meeting the body where it is. It's about stabilizing. It's about providing the right things, eating enough food, and doing the really boring work of eating on time. Sometimes mental health symptoms aren't random and they're not purely psychological. Sometimes there's also some other things going on. Sometimes it's about biological instability and that stress signaling. So I hope this was beneficial to you. I hope you took away something. If you recognize yourself in this, my information is right here. Please reach out to me, and I would love to hear from you and help you in the future.